If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and today we're so excited to have Paul McRandle on from my hometown of New York City, New York. Paul is the editor of the NRDC Simple Steps and Smarter Cities website. And Paul, welcome to Green is Good.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so excited. Mike and I have been so lucky and blessed to have so many amazing thought leaders and visionaries on from the NRDC, and we're just thankful to have just another great person, Paul. And you're on today to talk about something really amazing, something we touched on months back with Wendy Gordon, and you're here to talk about smartercities.org. Tell our listeners today how it's evolved and where the project and where your website is right now.
Right now we've just released our report on energy, and we looked at what cities across the country were doing to help conserve energy and reduce their carbon footprints. So it's both an efficiency point of view and a way of looking at how they're paying for green energy. We have launched this as a new project, and we're going to take every 3 months a new report on and look at things like transportation, look at water usage in cities, look at green building and smart growth and all this sort of thing. So that we want to give a full rounded picture of what cities across the country are doing to green their environmental profile. And this will take about 3 years, but we hope to really be able to highlight a lot of stories and tell about what are the best things that cities are doing.
Paul, we have so many questions to ask you today, but here's a question. The NRDC is just an amazing organization, and we're just huge fans of it here at Green is Good, and so many of your, as I said, thought leaders and writers and visionaries have been on our show already. How do sausages get made, though? How did you guys come up with this great idea? And how did that really happen? Our listeners and Mike and I want to know that.
Okay. Well, where it all started was about 2005. We were looking at, and we were depressed by a situation that hasn't changed much, the fact that the federal government has really abdicated any responsibility for dealing with global warming. But at that time, Seattle's Mayor Greg Nichols came up with the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement, and he's now managed to get over 1,000 mayors across the country to sign up for that. And it seemed like cities were where the action was. Cities were where environmental change was happening in the U.S. So we wanted, given that the federal story was a little bit depressing, to say the least, we wanted to get out there and show what cities are doing and what their residents and citizens should get behind and encourage and learn from, so that cities that perhaps may not have gotten on board yet could pick up from these other places.
So great. And so how do you define then a smarter city, and how do you rate these cities?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we call smarter cities are cities that are using their environmental resources and also the people who live there in essentially a smarter fashion. They're not polluting their air, they're not polluting their water. They're getting their people also to help out in this and are learning from them. So we have we are excited by places like Reno, Nevada, which has a green summit annually, and it invites all the residents of Reno to come in and provide ideas and talk about the coming year's environmental initiatives and programs. So that's a broad idea of what a smarter city is. Then what we do is we go and find for a particular sustainability factor, which we call, and in this case it was energy conservation and production. We look at what's the best data available, what are the best reports showing across the country how cities maybe are producing energy or the carbon footprints of cities. And there are several reports we looked at in this case, and then when we can't get enough information from those reports, we send out surveys to every city in the country that has a population of 50,000 or more. That's 655 cities in total.
Wow.
So we want to be as inclusive as we can, and we go back to those cities again and again to encourage them to fill out the survey, to help them in whatever we can, so we can get as much information as possible.
Well, then how did you, so now you're launching this Great website. And again, for our listeners out there in front of your laptop, computer, iPad, it's smartercities.org. Go to that site. It's amazing. Mike, you've got the site up in front of you now.
It's really cool. And, John, there's a list of all of the cities that are already being tracked, and it kind of shows what the matrix are and why these cities are the cities to watch. It's really cool, and I would like to encourage our listeners to hit this site and then find out what you can do to get whatever city you happen to be listening in listed as one of America's smartest cities.
And Paul, and thank you, Mike. That's a great point. And Paul, how did you come up with the first 22 then? Why 22, and how can you grow that over what's your vision at the NRDC to take it out? Like, how big can it go? Can 22 eventually become 655, or what's the goal?
Well, that's what we would like, and we would like to even go to smaller cities if we could. It's really a question of manpower. But,
right.
The thing is that we set a series of thresholds, and we said if cities, have reduced their energy consumption per capita below a certain amount, if cities have a target for their energy reductions, they were then, if they reached a certain set of thresholds, then they became smarter cities. So we didn't rank them against each other. We just asked that they meet these standards.
Gotcha.
And so we didn't get a kind of the top 10 cities. We got 22,
okay.
Of which there were different numbers in different size categories.
And Paul, let me ask you, just looking through your site, I kind of sense a recurring pattern here. It seems like part of the impetus for these cities to even begin their own energy audits, et cetera, and finding out ways of becoming more efficient as a municipal government when it comes to energy and wastewater treatment, et cetera, there is an economic side to that. Am I picking up a pattern here?
Well, that's obviously very important. And, we are in pretty austere times, too. Cities are trying to find money wherever they can, and ideally, without having to lay off more employees. So they're reducing hours and doing things. But, saving energy is a prime way to do this. Many of them find that their buildings are inefficient, that there are simple changes they can make to their heating and cooling systems, that they can change the lighting and make, put it in LEDs and streetlights and so on. All of these end up being big money savers. And those allow cities to provide the programs that the citizens need and keep the city in good repair.
I've been on your site. Mike's on it now. It's wonderful. I mean, we're so excited to be able to talk to our listeners and share this with them. Talk a little bit about the first 22. First of all, explain how come there's so many cities from Texas? How did that happen? And what do you think is in the water down there?
Well, Texas is interesting. It's a pretty unique state, and one of the reasons why is because it owns its own power grid, and that allows the state to make decisions that no other state really has the power to do, so to speak. Among these, they have made wind power a priority, and they generate twice as much wind power as the next highest state, which would be Iowa. And the amount of wind power that Texas generates accounts for more than 30% of all the wind energy created in the U.S. So what they have chosen to do is, back in 1999, they mandated the state put out 2,000 megawatts from renewable energy sources by last year. And then in 2005, with wind farms coming online, they increased that mandate up to 6,000 megawatts by 2015. So at that state level, you had a big push, and El Paso, Austin, Dallas, Denton, Texas, these are the cities that are all on our list. They've all benefited from these mandates, but they've also made strides on their own that are quite impressive.
Interesting. And so when you were, before you got back the questionnaires and as this was evolving internally at the NRDC, and you were, I'm sure guessing to yourself which cities were going to be the superstars to start this whole process and which maybe were going to be the laggers. What cities really surprised you, on both sides, especially on the good side, because we love focusing on good here? What were the good surprises?
Well, I have to say El Paso is one. I really didn't know that it had made the kinds of moves that it has done. And I think it's, when you think of the top green cities, you think of these West Coast cities. And El Paso just doesn't have that reputation. But in fact, it's been working on putting a 20-megawatt solar power plant to begin construction this year. It has a new mission to limit its energy use to 70% of its 2008 levels, by 2014. It's setting these targets, and it's working towards them in a very concrete fashion, and that's actually made it pass a lot of our thresholds and really stand out. So, El Paso is a story that that we like to mention. Reno, as I mentioned before, is another interesting city, both for its green summit and the research that it encourages there. Even on City Hall, they're doing tests of different types of windmills to see which are the most efficient windmills. They're looking at the city's geothermal energy because, as Senator Reid has said, this city is sitting on what could be the Saudi Arabia of geothermal energy.
Wow.
So in a place in a fairly conservative state like Nevada, Reno is really making strides.
Well, it's really interesting too, Paul. Just looking, and again, I'm getting this information from your wonderful site. I want to give a shout out to smartercities.org, which is really cool. Talking about El Paso, they're sitting in the middle of a desert, and most of us in the Central Valley can understand what water shortage is like, but they've increased their annual supply of water by about 25% because of a desalination plant that was created to treat the existing brackish water that is there now with only about less than 9% or 9 inches of annual rainfall. This is a really important thing and another important step that is proving why El Paso, Texas is one of the smarter cities in America.
Yeah, that's water supply and handling waters in drought are going to be a really important issue. And NRDC also just released a report showing that by 2050, global warming is going to have a serious impact on the water supplies of counties across the U.S., and many of them will be facing much more dire conditions if we do nothing. So, these issues are very much tied together. We have to get our energy conservation and our carbon emissions under control because it will have effects that will attack our food supply and it will impact our water supply across the country.
I know with regards to your definition of smarter, these part of the definition is efficiency, sustainability, equitability, and livability. Besides carbon footprint and wind and all those, that's tied to, what about other programs that were unique that really inspired you and you're able now to highlight on this great website and inspire other city managers and mayors across America to maybe potentially implement these type of unique programs?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there are a couple we've already mentioned, but I'd also like to mention one, a small town, which actually is not in our list. It's too small, but we had published a piece on them. It's Ellensburg, Washington, which is a small kind of high prairie community in Washington State. They are the first city in the U.S. to have a community solar project in which the residents funded the creation of a set of solar PV generators that feed into the grid, and those residents each get back a small amount of money for the investment they put in. This saved them from having to put power PV cells on their rooftops and the hassle of installation there, and instead concentrated it all in one area. So that was kind of a neat thing that even small communities can do.
Interesting. On the site, our listeners always email Mike and myself, and they ask us, how can they get involved? What's the door or the window for them to step through to become part of the solution in this green revolution? Talk a little bit about some of the features on your website in terms of citizen reporting and city wikis and things like that. Explain how our listeners can now become integrated and part of the conversation on what you're doing with smartercities.org.
Well, thank you for mentioning those tools. Yeah, the City Wiki is an area that we set up to allow anybody who wants to tell us their story about their city to just put up information and to encourage responses from their community members and others. And we then would be happy to draw from that information, report on these, and follow these stories up. So we're really interested in getting people involved in there. And we've got, in fact, a 14-year-old girl who's been working with us on a school garden program, and she wants to get others encouraged through the City Wiki. So that's one way to do it. We have consumer reporter stories, citizen reporter stories, and there we are encouraging citizens again to send stories to us that we would vet and work on and post. And that's a little more of an edited version of this. But it's another area where we like to encourage people. But I also like to mention that for each of the cities we provide toolkits.
Okay.
And those toolkits are links to programs where anybody can get more information about the real nitty-gritty of what the city is doing. They can see laws passed. They can see the details of initiatives and programs and their benchmarking and so on. And those kinds of that kind of information is the kind of things that cities need when they are trying to implement a new program. So that a citizen who wants to recommend that a city take up a community solar project can point to Ellensburg and can point to the specific pages and can bring that information with them to city council meetings.
So the essence of what's going on here is you're democratizing the spreading of best practices among the cities, and also encouraging the denizens of these cities, if they see something, to say something and report it back up to your website, which then gets to have visibility to all.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. That's really what we are doing, highlighting stories and trying to get the city administrators and the citizens excited, involved, and talking to each other across state boundaries and city lines.
That is so wonderful and amazing. You know, what we loved, Mike and I love to highlight solutions here and simple steps to not make this so daunting for both citizens and also the leaders of cities. Can you share some of the simpler things that good and green cities are doing now already and that other cities can start doing immediately to start making them a smarter city?
Sure. And really the most important thing, which is also a simple thing to do, is to set targets. Once you set an efficiency target, then you can find ways to work towards it. But you have to come up with a firm target to say, we will reduce our energy consumption or we will reduce our water consumption by, X number of kilowatt hours by 2010, by 2015, by 2020, so that you have a plan in place. And then you can start looking at the tools that are available to do that and thinking creatively about those tools. Among those tools are things as simple as installing LED bulbs in city signs. Some cities will do things like buying green energy, renewable energy certificates, which are wind energy, that's generated elsewhere, and you simply buy certificates to encourage that wind energy to continue to be created. So it doesn't involve the setup of a wind power plant or other green energy site, but at least it's supporting that kind of move. That's probably the simplest, least effort action you can take. And
you're saying then the most important thing to do is to begin the process by setting targets.
Yes, the targets really are the essential element here, because if you don't set targets and you don't track your progress towards making those, then you really are just buying technology and implementing technology without a plan. Okay,
and the two important numbers when you set that target is a percentage or a number of what you're going to reduce by what percent and a by when. You need both of those, right?
You need both of those, yeah, and you need the tracking. Who's going to keep track of this information?
So basically, what's measurable is manageable, and there's no way to really create there's no way to create a smarter city if you don't start with measurable, therefore manageable goals.
That's right. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Hey, so let's sort of morph the conversation then towards some of what's going on in Washington and how that ties back to the cities. The whole issue of reinventing our economy with the green collar workforce. How does smarter cities have a role in the whole economy with regards to creating green greening of jobs, greening of companies, and also the new green collar and emerging green collar workforce?
Mm-hmm. Well, one city that we like to point out in this as an example here is Oakland, because they are dealing both with greening, creating green collar jobs at a higher level, but also with creating entry level green jobs for the poor members of the community, and they want to bring everybody with them into this green economy. So they've created a Green Jobs Corps, and they just graduated their first class of 40 back in 2009, and they're sending these skilled workers into jobs doing retrofitting, weatherization, and so on. A number of cities like Portland too are getting stimulus funds from Washington and putting that to work. Weatherizing homes, and a lot of cities have very poorly insulated homes that are leaking energy right out the windows and out the doors. And if you get those homes sealed up properly insulated, they will save a lot of energy. That will save the owners a lot of money, and it will save the city both the cost of having to get a new power plant as population grows, and the emissions, both carbon and also, of course, we're talking about pollution in terms of smog that affects people's health. So these weatherization jobs, they require people on the ground to do it, and you're talking about 5 people working at every house. You got 500 houses, that's or more. That's a fair number of jobs that can be created.
Paul, unfortunately, we're down to the last 2 minutes or so. And again, we're huge. Mike and I and Green is Good are huge fans of the NRDC and all the great work you're doing. Can you leave our listeners with some pearls of wisdom, pearls of green wisdom on how they can become part of the solution, and not only with Smarter Cities, but with the NRDC and other great organizations out there? What are some of the ideas that you can share with them right now as we say goodbye with our listeners on how they could become involved with the Green Revolution?
Well, what we like to do is to give people simple behavioral changes that they can make, simple changes they can do on a daily basis. So, we encourage people to act up politically and to speak up to their congresspeople, but at the same time, we want people to just make the changes like taking the bus to work, riding a bicycle to work, want them to buy food from the local farmers markets when they can, to support local farms, which is not just a matter of supporting small farms, but also is keeping the land preserved from being taken over by residential housing units and so on that then pollute the waterways more. So it's a matter of taking some local actions like those, and coupling them with this political activity. With you can donate, obviously, to environmental organizations that support causes that you think are important. You can visit NRDC.org and others and find ways to donate. But you don't just have to feel that your task is just giving up money to let others do things. You should step forward and speak up at your city council meetings. Be in touch with your mayor. Be in touch, with your city council members. Let them know what's important to you. These at that grassroots level, the cities are a good spot to act on. Your voice is more easily heard.
I love it. That is so great and well put. And we're so thankful for your time today from New York City, New York, Paul McRandle. Please, for all our listeners out there, look at all the great things the NRDC is doing at nrdc.org. Also look at the great website Paul and Wendy work on at smartercities.org. smartercities.org is just another great and amazing visionary tool created by the NRDC. Paul McRandle, you are truly living proof that green is good.